Well, we get back to reading Passport to Magonia on UFOs, folklore, and the parallel worlds. JACQUES VALLEE. Kind of disappointed. I wanted to send Robbie Lowdown and his partner, his better half, a book. And they already had it. Good thing I found out in time. As far as the books go, I'm at 16,000 words. It's not too bad for 8 days. They say if you would write 500 words a day, you could finish a book within 5.5 months. So I imagine if you double that, that would then be what, about a little under 3 months. And if you double that, it should be somewhere about a month and a half. That's kind of my goal. I'd like to get it done by then. Now we're talking about, was it something around 70,000 words? Is that what it'd be? 70,000 to 80,000 words? They say that's what you need to have in order for a publisher to seriously consider publishing a book. They're shorter ones that generally you have to do for the younger crowd. My book, I got a feeling it's going to upset a few people. Not that I intend on that, but I'm not going to lie for my truth, or anybody else's for that matter. I'm just going to share my story as it is. So far, it's been one hell of a ride. Writing and revisiting 2017. My memories of the first time I actually saw a UFO that lasted forever, it seemed. In fact, it was at my mother's, my now deceased mother, the condo that she lived at the time. I stopped over there to see my son. Not to see my son, with my son, to see her. And in the usual verbal abuse and disapproval from my lovely mother came up. So I went outside to do what I usually do. And it was the best coping mechanism there is. I went and had a cigarette by my car. And as I was looking up in the sky, in the northeastern portion above the trees, several hundred yards above, there was a damn UFO. The exact same thing that a Brown Dwarf is filming right now, in the middle of the day. I watched that thing go from the northeast sky to the northwest sky. Actually, what happened was, I tried to film it, but my camera couldn't pick it up. Didn't have decent enough cell phone at that time, and I only used that cell phone anyways to take pictures. I think in the past 10 years, I've only been hooked up to the cell phone a total of maybe 6 months. And I tried with one of those Obama phones. That sucked. Those things just suck so bad. It wasn't even worth even doing or having. So anyways, I tried to take pictures, but it didn't show up on the camera. So the cheap Android cell phone, even by that time, 2016, was probably about 8 to 9, maybe 10 years old. So I went back in the house to tell my mom. I said, "Mom, I'm watching this thing. It looks like a UFO. It almost seems like it's flapping wings. It's moving in and out, like it might be flapping wings." I tried to encourage her to come out. She wasn't interested, as usual. Which is ironic, because my mother had a statue of an angel in her yard, in the garden they made for her. And she had those statuettes of angels and Jesus and everything else in her house. So I went back out after I used the restroom and realized that there's no point being in there. And when I came back out after about 15 minutes, like I said, it's now in the northeastern portion of the sky, slowly going west. It wasn't a bird. It wasn't a hot air balloon. It wasn't some balloon from some kid, helium balloon that some kid lost. It moved steady. But when it was moving, it was pulsating back and forth in different hues of white to gray to black. Was it something chromatic? I can't think of the name of it right now. But regardless, it doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is, you could tell it was just going from shades of black to white to gray and back to black. It was like it was pulsating or moving. Well, maybe it was plasma. I don't know. But that was the same time period when I had my first encounter with a Sasquatch standing next to Crow Indian medicine man. At least he is claimed to be that. And he sure damn looked like, he sure was an Indian, a Native American, a member of the First Nations. I don't know what to say. Oh, I know what to say. So then, a couple years later, I saw one of those, again, it was a different one, it was at night. It was a light ball. It's like a sphere, or I shouldn't say ball because it's too far away, but it was at least a circle, around light, white, steadily moving towards me. Then a plane showed up from the southwest, heading towards it, and it took a drastic 45-degree turn. I don't know if it was a turn. It just shot off 45 degrees to the west, just like that. Then my last UFO that I seen was in February of this year, in which a streak of what it looked like was fireworks, or a better way of saying it was like something. It lit up the frickin' neighborhood, and the neighbors top of their homes and the trees, and it looked like something was kind of disintegrating. But it wasn't a meteor. It wasn't obviously an asteroid. And I saw it through my kitchen window. I went out the back with my decent camera at this point, my P900, and I took a couple pictures, got a bit of the streak, but this tree branches were obscuring it. I followed it to the east, and it was a orange sphere in the sky. I couldn't film it though. It couldn't capture it on my camera, but I saw it with my naked eyes as it steadily went to the east towards Lake Erie. It wasn't a weather balloon. It wasn't one of those satelloons. I don't know what the fuck it was, except it's a UFO. Now I've heard numerous reports of people seeing these orange globes or balls, circles, UFOs in the sky. I saw it as well. It seems I see these things when I least expect it. Now I got a guy like Brown Dwarf. He seems to have some connection. Maybe he's using that C5 program or whatever, and he seems to catch them on almost a daily basis. I don't know if that's what I want to be necessarily doing every day, although it might be kind of cool. He lives in California, so it's not that bad, although when it's raining it sucks. But, the temperature's nice, so it's not so bad to sit out there with your camera and film them. This time of year, I don't want to do that. I'm too old for that. I do go walk out my back, and takes film images of things in the sky or on the trees. Clearly, I'm filming orbs and other things that are lurking around. Is that the right word? Well, up in the sky there. I keep the magnification as close as possible because I really want to take pictures of things around me, around the trees, not 100 yards 200 yards or a mile up in the sky. I want to see what's around me. Some of it's dust particulates and water vapor and other things. It's particulate matter. But there's also other things going on there as well. And some very interesting and bizarre behavior that I think is worth researching, at least for myself. Not that you're already convinced anybody else that this stuff is real, because the only way you're ever going to find out if what I'm sharing with you, what I'm reading, what I'm experiencing is real, is if you have your own experiences. And this is part of the rub in this Fortean dystopic nightmare that we live in. I don't know what else to call it. It seems like it's like everyone has their own experiences, sees their own things. Sometimes there's things in common, but many times they're all varied just a little bit in behavior and the way the experience plays out. It's almost like they do it deliberately so that we fight and bicker about whether or not the guy next to you is telling you the truth or not, right? It's pretty sinisterly, benevolently clever. I can't say everything that I'm filming is under the understanding of what's going on here in this soul trap matrix we're in, this simulation. How many of it's holographic? How much is living sentient beings? How much are they just creatures like insects? Not insects that you and I know of, but something that's part of parallel worlds and multiple universes. Something that's maybe interdimensional, or probably could be terrestrial, like was brought up by the reading that we did with Keel. I don't know, but I guess I should get to reading here, huh? I'm happy that I do. I have been able to, I actually written 16,000 words. I never thought in a million years I'd even write 1,000 words. I know, 16,000. I guess I have a lot of things to say after the past 6 years. A lot of things to share. Hopefully somebody values it besides myself. No one knows. All you can do is just do your best. That's all we can do, right? Return of the humanoids. One night in January 1958, a woman whose name I am not authorized to publish was driving along the New York State Thruway in the vicinity of Niagara Falls in the midst of a violent snowstorm. The exact time was 1:30 a.m., and the lady was going to visit her son. Then, in the Army, she was driving very carefully, trying to find an exit, for she believed the thoroughway was closed ahead for her. Visibility was extremely bad, and she had no chance to think when she suddenly saw what seemed to be an airplane wreck on the center of the parkway. A large shape was visible. This sounds familiar. Other people had a man. Keel talked about this with a man that had a very similar experience. So a large shape was visible. A slim rod, at least 50 feet high, was illuminated and getting shorter as though it were sinking into the ground. My motor slowed down as I came closer to my car stopped completely. I became panicky and tried desperately to start it as I had no lights. My first thought was to get out and see what was happening, but I suddenly saw two shapes rising around that slim pole, which was still growing shorter. They were suspended, but moving about. What is that word? Elyssi seemed to be seemed to be like animals with four legs and a tall but two front feelers under the head, like arms. Then, before I could, oh, this is a bad one. Something, whatever. The ceiling disappeared. That was a bad print right there. I'm sorry. It disappeared in shape, rose, and then I realized it was a saucer. It spun and zoomed about 10 feet off the ground and up into the air, and I could not see it where it went. The light suddenly came on. I started the car, and it was all right. I pulled up to that place and got out with a flashlight and walked over to where it had been sitting. A large hole was melted in the snow for a foot across, and the grass was showing on it. The grass was warm, but nothing was dug up around there. That one was hard to read. The lady, who met only with disbelief when she told her story to her family, reported the case in a letter to Otto Binder when his syndicated series, Our Space Age, began to appear in a number of newspapers. The most puzzling element is this account is not so much what is described, but the fact that such stories have become, since 1946, rather common in all parts of the world. To the physicist, of course, they appear unbelievable, just as the strange mannequin meant by Saint Anthony would appear unbelievable to a biologist. And yet, there are several cases on record in which similar accounts are associated with traces that can hardly be questioned. And the celebrated incident at Socorro, New Mexico, it was a policeman, Lonnie Zamora, who reported seeing two small beings dressed in white close to a shiny egg-shaped object which rested on four pads before it took off with a thunderous noise, only to become perfectly silent as it flew away. The incident took place on April 24, 1964, and was the occasion for some interesting measurements by local police officials and the Federal Bureau of Investigation man of the traces left by the object, and of some even more interesting deductions by William T. Powers. It sounds like that's a very Mormon name, Powers, on the possible mechanical construction of the landing gear. Here again we observe an emotional pattern strangely reminiscent of the medieval scene just surveyed. The witness in the Socorro case, when he was about to be interviewed, by Air Force investigators, was so little was convinced that he had observed a device of human construction that he asked to see a priest before releasing his report to authorities. Then, of course, there is a report of the Kentucky family who claimed to have been besieged by several little men whose appearance was completely fantastic. The incident occurred. Oh, this is not going to be good. Okay, I still pull it off for now. Observations of, shit. My back is burnt, my shoulders. Oh my God. Observations of behavior of the visitors. One of the creatures was seen approaching the farmhouse with both hands raised. When it was about 20 feet away, two of the witnesses shot at the intruder. It did a flip and was lost in the darkness. Then it appeared at the window when the men came back inside the house and was again shot at. Another creature seen on the roof was knocked over by a bullet, but instead of falling, it floated to the ground. The entities had oversized heads, almost perfectly round, and very long arms, terminating to huge hands armed with talons. They wore a sort of glowing aluminum suit, which is reminiscent of the oh God, my back's hurting so bad. Sylphs of 1491. Their eyes were very large and apparently very sensitive. They always approached the house from the darkest corner. The eyes had no pupils and no eyelids. The eyes were much larger than human eyes and set on the side of the head. The creatures generally walked upright, but when shot at, they would run on all fours with extreme rapidity. Their arms seemed to provide most of the propulsion. On September 10, 1954, in Quarable, a small French village near the Belgian border. That's where my mom would probably be from, that area. She was Rh negative. She passed on to me Rh negative disease and the symptoms thereof. So not only do I have MS, but I was born with Rh negative disease. Fuck. Don't tell me this place is not a soul-trapped matrix. And just think of the billions of people now and before me that have suffered worse than I have. I find no purpose in any of it, except something or someone's are feasting upon us. Maybe creating loosh, as Mr. Bob Monroe said. At about 10:30 p.m., Marcus DeWild stepped outside and was at once intrigued by a dark mass on the railroad tracks. Always so many things happen around the railroad tracks. DeWild then heard footsteps in the night. Turning on his light, he found himself facing two beings wearing very large helmets and what seemed to be heavy diving suits. They had broad shoulders, but DeWild did not see their arms. They were less than 4 feet tall. And DeWild moved towards them with the intention of intercepting them. but the light appeared on the side of the dark object on the tracks, and Wilde found he could not make a single move. And when he regained control of his body, the two visitors had re-entered the supposed machine and flown away. This classic observation had a strange sequel. Never before published, French civilian investigators who studied the case were cooperating closely with local police officials, but there were other people on the site, notably representatives of the air police from Paris. When an inquiry was made regarding the analysis performed by some stones found calcined at the spot where the saucer had been seen by Dwight, it was discovered that even... I know I suck at reading, but I'm sure I have fun reading this one. Police could not obtain information as the results of the analysis. In the words of a local police chief, the official body working in liaison with the air police belongs to the Ministry of National Defense. The very name of this ministry excludes the idea of any communication. On November 19th of 1954, the following facts came to light. The police confirmed that Dwight had been a second report concerning an observation of an object in the vicinity of his home. We were later to learn that the report in fact described a landing. However, the police said Dwight and his family have decided, for fear of adverse publicity, to take no one in their confidence regarding this second occurrence. Therefore, you will find no mention of it in local newspapers. Furthermore, civilian investigators were told politely, but in no uncertain terms, that any further information on such incidences would be kept confidential by the police. Reports continue, however, and some of them would have delighted Paracelsus. On October 14th, 1954, a miner named Starovsky claimed to have met on a country road near Urchin, also in the north of France, a strange being of small height and bulky fingers with large slanted eyes and a fur-covered body. The midget, less than 4 feet tall, had a large head and wore a brown skull cap, which formed a fillet of a few inches above the eyes. The eyes protruded with very small irises. The nose was flat. The lips were thick and red. A minor detail: the witness did not claim he had seen the creature emerge from a flying saucer or re-enter it. He just happened to meet the strange being, who did not wear any kind of respiratory device. Before he could think of stopping him, the creature had disappeared. 6 days later, on October 20th, 1954, in Paravicino and the Erba, near Como, Italy, a man had just put his car in the garage when he saw a strange being covered with a luminous suit, about 4 feet tall, standing near a tree. Sure enough, when he saw the motorist, the creature aimed a beam from some sort of flashlight at him, paralyzing the witness until a motion he made when clenching the fist holding the garage key seemed to free him. He rushed to attack the stranger, who rose from the ground and fled with a soft whirring. Why would you go attack the thing if you don't even know what the hell it is? Whirring sound. The author of this unbelievable story was 37 years old and was known locally as a trustworthy man. He arrived home in a state of great shock, I understand that, and went to bed with a high fever. Yeah. Jeez. High fever. You know, when I had my second encounter in those 3 days of high strangeness, I had a terrible neck ache and this left side of my head, and it lasted for like a month and a half. I don't know if it was due to the 3 days of absolute stress or they actually did something to me. I don't know. The details of the case were obtained. I'm talking about myself right now, but that last part was about me. The details of the case were obtained through an investigation by the Italian police, which I probably should expand on that part of the story. God, I got so many things to talk about. In this book I'm writing, 11, and I have, if no one believes me, I don't blame them. 11 years later, the files of landing reports and strange creatures associated with them had become very thick indeed. Then a new flurry of reports began. On July 1st, 1965, Maurice Mass, a French farmer who lived in Valençluc, I don't know if I pronounced it, Valençluc? I don't know, had the following experience as he arrived in his field at 6 a.m. and was getting ready to start his tractor. He heard an unusual noise. Stepping into the open, he saw a machine that had landed in his lavender field. He bought it. Oh, he thought. He thought it must be some sort of prototype and walked towards it with the mind to tell the pilots in no uncertain words to go find mother landing spot for their contraption. So I made this mother effing trap landing trap. That was right. It was only when he was within 20 feet of the machine that he came in full view of the scene and realized his mistake. The object was egg-shaped and had a round cockpit. Egg-shaped with a round cockpit. Was supported by 6 thin legs, like an insect, and a central pivot. It was not bigger than a car, and front appearing to examine the lavender plant were the 2 pilots. They were dressed in one-piece greenish suits. Grayish-greenish. On the pilots, on the left side of their belts was a small container. A large one was on the right side. They were less than 4 feet tall and had human eyes, but their heads were very large, about 3 times the volume of a human head. They had practically no mouth, only a very small opening, without lips. They wore no respirator device, no headgear, and no gloves. They had small, normal hands, and when Massey came upon them, they seemed to become suddenly aware of his existence, and yet it was without any indication of fear or surprise that one of the pilots took a small tube from its container and pointed it at Massey, with the result that the witness found himself suddenly incapable of movement. For the next 60 seconds or so, the two entities looked at Massey. They appeared to be exchanging their impressions vocally in a sort of gargle. These sounds came from their throats insisted the witness. The typing is some serious typos. Hopefully it's not going to be this way the whole reading. I'm still going to read it anyways. I'll do my best. But the mouths did not move. The eyes, in the meantime, conveyed human expressions. In private, Massey told the civilian investigator that he had not been frightened by their attitude, that it contained more friendly curiosity than hostility towards him. After some time, estimated by Massey, as I have said, as about 1 minute, the creatures went inside the craft. The door closed, like the front part of a wooden file cabinet. Really? But Massey could see them through the cockpit. They were facing him as the object took off in the opposite direction, first hovering a few feet from the ground, then rising obliquely with the takeoff speed of the jet plane. Okay. Where did he get an E from? That's a weird takeoff. Okay. When it was about 60 yards away, it vanished. The witness was closely questioned. On this last point by French scientists who were privately interested by the case, but Massey insisted he could not say whether the object went away so fast that the eye could not follow it, or whether it actually disappeared. He made it quite clear, however, that one moment the thing was there, the next moment it was not there anymore. Massey remained alone in his field, paralyzed. The word paralyzed is not properly used in connection with incidences of this type. Massey said that he remained conscious during the whole observation. His physical functions, respiration, heartbeat, were not hampered, but he could not move. Then he became very frightened indeed, alone in the field, unable even to call for help. Boy, do I know about that. Massey thought he was going to die. It was only after about 20 minutes that he gradually regained voluntary control of his muscles and was able to go home. There is a sequel to his experience. For several weeks after the incident, Massey was overcome with drowsiness, and all his relatives, as well as the investigators, observed that he needed so much sleep that he found it difficult to stay awake even for 4 hours at a time. This is another like-known characteristic of close proximity cases. To Massey, who was used to working from sun up to sundown, as the early hour of his observation itself shows. This was a very impressive and disturbing consequence of his experience. Another result of the publicity of the case attracted was the great damage to Massey's Field, as crowds of tourists gathered to see the traces left by the craft. At this point, I should say that Massey is a man respected in the community, a former resistant fighter, a conscientious, and that doesn't look good. Where's that at? Do I have to refresh this? A successful farmer. He is regarded as absolutely trustworthy by the police authorities, who investigated the case under the direction of Captain Valnet of Dines, I guess that's how you pronounce it, Dining? Yet this man tells us a story that does not simply appear fanciful, it is completely unbelievable. What is Massey's impression of the visitors? For some reason, something says he knows they meant no harm. They were not hostile to him, only indifferent. As he stood facing them during the long minute, he suddenly was overcome with the certitude that they were good. I believe he is unable to rationalize, but at no point did he understand their strange language. The story is fantastic, yet it reminds us of the account of Barney and Betty Hill gave under hypnosis of their alleged abduction in New Hampshire. The account involved the same description of alien language, of entities whose expressions were almost human, of an overwhelming feeling of confidence, and of not the slightest indication that the incident had a meaningful purpose or followed an intelligent pattern. Of considerable interest to the psychologists is the fact that the entities are endowed with the same fugitiveness and behave with the same ignorance of logical or physical laws as the reflection of a dream, the monsters of our nightmares, the unpredictable witches of our childhood. Yet their craft do leave deep indentations in the ground, according to the observers, who were fully awake and absolutely competent at the time of the sighting. What does it all mean? How can one reconcile these apparently contradictory facts? Some, in a laudable attempt, question the classical research of patterns. It is necessarily true, they ask, that we would detect meaningful patterns in the same sense of our own intelligence level and the behavior of a superior race. It is not much more likely that we would find in their actions only random data and incoherent pictures, much as a dog would if confronted with a mathematician writing on the blackboard. If so, it is only after new concepts have emerged in our consciousness that our vision of the world would be suddenly illuminated, and that we would truly discover the meaning of this presence in our environment. And if a superior race does in fact generate what we are now observing as UFO phenomena, is it not precisely with the purpose of changing the course of human destiny by presenting us with evidence of our limitations and technical... See, that's 22. Let's make sure that we are... So, yeah, well, it's all kind of chopped up a little bit. Precisely with the purpose of changing the course of human destiny by presenting us with evidence of our limitations in technical as well as mental realm. This theory, which has been presented in particular by the French science writer Amin Michel or Michel, so is it Amin? I don't even know how to speak French. Amin Michel, and several brilliant books and articles, is perhaps the most intriguing that has been put forward to date. It does not attempt, however, to answer the question of the nature of objects. Children of the unknown, if they are not real, should we see these rumors as signs that something in human imagination has changed, bringing into a new light uncharted areas of our collective conscious? They may be only children of our fancy and our love for them akin to our love for Batman and Cinderella, but they may be real. Modern science rules over a narrow universe, one particular variation on an infinite theme. In any case, it is important to understand what needs these images fulfill, why this knowledge is both so exciting and so distressing to us. Such is the subject of this book. Precisely, so it's the duplication of that page. And that's the end of that. Then we're in chapter 2, the good people. But I'll read that next time. That was, hopefully that was just, it's not going to be consistent throughout. But then again, we'll make the most of it. I mean, what do we want for free anyways?
You're going to try, go all the way. Otherwise, don't even start. If you're going to try, go all the way. This could mean losing girlfriends, wives, relatives, jobs, and maybe your mind.
break, I feel. See Go